Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Teresa DeWild. I'm a program specialist with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And we're going to have a conversation on our 8th week, the last in the actual permanent series that we have for our enrichment sessions. The topic today is going to be what influences a teen the most to drink. And I have invited Sergeant Matt Lynn from the Lyons Police Department to come in and talk with us as well today. So, you know that MAD's mission, we push to have no more victims of this, 100% preventable crime, but we have 4 prongs to our mission statement. We have to end drunk driving, to help fight the victims of drunk driving, and support the victims and prevent underage drinking. And then I have a short video for you.
At MAD, we believe in zero fathers who aren't there for bedtime, 0 mothers who miss the first day of school, 0 children who never come home. We believe in 0 victims of drunk driving. With MAD, your support adds up to 0. Because we believe in a hug on the first day of school. We believe in another bedtime story. We believe in no more victims. We believe in 0.
Okay, and then while we go through our presentation today, I just have, some small little ground rules to make sure that you mute your guys' line. Be courteous to our presenters and other guests. We do have a chat box within Zoom, so if you have any questions during the presentation, please send those through chat. And don't be afraid to ask questions, and just remember that we're all here to learn. So any question you have, somebody else may have the same one, so don't be afraid to ask. So our agenda today is going to be, things that we're going to think about on the topic, the issue, the future, and of course the closing. We also have polls that we're going to be doing throughout the presentation. So I'm going to launch the first one just to kind of capture who we have in our audience today. Okay. So the things that we're going to think about today as we're going through the presentation, we're going to talk about how impaired driving affects all of us. So any decision that someone makes to get behind the wheel of a vehicle under the drugs or alcohol, it not only affects them, but it affects everybody. What are the reasons that people will use to make it okay to drink and drive, or to drink underage? How do you feel if someone you know or loved was hurt because of their choices? And how would you feel if you were the one that was directly impacted by these choices? And then, of course, we're going to end with ways that you can help. So the biggest issue, we'll start off with some statistics. Our national drunk and drug driving fatalities, these are nationwide. So in 2018, we had 10,876 fatalities, over 290,000 injuries. And when you think of these injuries, don't think of them as like, bumps, scrapes, bruises, or a few stitches. These are injuries that will now allow people to park in blue parking for the rest of their lives. So these are significant injuries. And then, of course, the societal cost that comes with it is over $132 billion. Now, these national underage drinking, these are non-driving incidences that occur with kids that are under the age of 21. We had 4,300 fatalities nationwide, 119,000 ER visits, and 24 billion at societal cost. Now these are, like I said, these are ones with teens who did not drive. These are just alcohol related incidents. So for our next question here, I'm gonna have you guys think, what influence has the most effect on a teen's choice to drink? Is it their peers, television, parents, or do you think they're all equal? Okay, so this is what everybody thought with their answers. And most of you said it was their peers. We had some that were all equal. But in actuality, it's the parents or the guardians of the youth and teens. And 74% of all the teens agree. So it kind of makes you think about, if you have kids of your own, or if you're a kid and you listen to your parents, whether or not you think you do. That little voice that's on the inside of your ear sometimes, that's what that is. So why do you think that a teen chooses to drink? Do you think it's for socialization, trying to fit in, life transitions, emotional or physiological or psychological pain, or all of the above? And you can just answer the top one on this one. The next one is on here too as well, but you can just enter the top one. So we're going to try it again. You can do the next one as well, I guess, if you want, where it has what percentage of 6th to 12th graders in Georgia have reported that they've consumed alcohol in the last 30 days. So you can answer both of those. We'll get to both of the slides. Okay. So as you see, the top one, trying to fit in, or all the above, were our answers. And then for the 6th to 12th graders in Georgia reported to have consumed alcohol in the last 30 days, we're actually kind of split with the panel, which is pretty cool. But you guys will see those answers here in just a minute. But for this one, those of you that did answer all of the above, you are correct. Each one of these will play a role into why youth and teens choose to drink. And this is one of the reasons why we, as MAD, try to educate both youth and parents on trying to have the conversations early about how alcohol is not something that you should be doing until you're of age. So we're kind of going to break down the different topics here a little bit. So socialization, instead of being in an area where there's going to be lots of alcohol or drugs there, you want to find activities that are healthy and safe without drugs. If you're at someone else's home, let your parents or guardians know where you're at, what the plan is, if a situation does come up, because we know it happens, and how you're going to be able to get home, whether you talk to your parents, you have a little code word in a text, or something along those lines. And then always remember which goals and what steps you need to meet to reach those goals, because everybody has a goal, whether it's within the next month, year, 5 years, 10 years. And if you get in trouble for underage drinking or something were to happen to you, how would that affect your goals? And then, of course, trying to fit in. I mean, every teenager, every person has tried to do this, be part of the crowd. But the best part with this is, you want your friends to meet your parents, and vice versa. You want to meet the parents or the guardians of your friends as well. So everybody knows, what's going on, who's friends with who. And then again, you always want to have a plan. And acceptance may be needed in a friendship, which of course you always want to be accepted by someone. But if you're being forced to do something that you don't like, I don't think necessarily that they're going to be one of your friends. And then life transitions. You don't want to be afraid to talk about anything that's changing in your life, especially with your parents or guardian. They're not going to know what's going on with you if you don't talk with them. And most parents are going to be pretty open to speaking with their kids. And if you don't have someone in your life, like a parent or guardian, maybe another adult, like a counselor at school, a teacher, or someone like Sergeant Lynn here, who is amazing to go and talk to. I see how he talks with people in his community every day. So don't be afraid to, talk to anybody about stuff. And then you want to try and set aside some one-on-one time with your parents where it's just you two, whether it's, sitting in the backyard, or maybe, going through drive-through to get some ice cream or coffee or, you know, something to eat, you know, just pick a time every once in a while where you can just sit and talk to your parent or guardian and have conversations about everything, not necessarily just drugs and alcohol, but just life in general. And then what can you do to help outside influence? With your emotional and psychological pain, this is the same thing. Communication is extremely key. I mean, if you don't talk to people about what's going on, they're not going to know what they need to do to help you. And your happiness is what is going to help keep you safe, and it's going to keep you healthy. If you're happy and everything is going great, you make sure that you stick to your goals and your plans for the future. And then always identify different and healthy ways to help manage stress. A lot of youth that I have spoken to in the past, they know of people that once they get stressed out, that's when they start going for drugs and alcohol, because it's a way for them to feel as though they're feeling better, when in actuality it's not helping at all. So you want to try and find things that do make you happy. They have some listed here, you know, getting more sleep. I know I'm a big fan of sleep. That's just me. But go outdoors, you know, if you have a pet, take them for a walk, or find, you know, a neighbor or a friend and go for walks. Go, you know, ride your bikes. They have those little scooter things my daughter uses all the time. They're on those things all the time. And again, those one-on-one times that you can have with an adult in your life can actually make a great difference. Okay, so social influence. And this is the one that we had talked about before. How many or what percentage of 6th to 12th graders in Georgia reportedly consumed alcohol in the past 30 days? Let's see if I can pull up those results again real quick so everybody can see. Yeah, because it was pretty split amongst everybody between 24 and 44%. Well, in actuality, it's only 8%. So that myth of a lot of kids use, well, everybody's doing it. Well, you know, this person's doing it and that person's doing it, so I kind of have to do it. It's not really true. Most kids are not drinking or doing drugs as they're getting older, when they're in high school at least. So don't try to think that just because maybe 1 or 2 people within your immediate group are involved in this, that everybody else is doing it, because that's not the average across the board. And I know that there's a lot of questions that we've had in the past about, you know, my best friend's parents let them drink. And these are some of the reasons why adults may give alcohol to underage drinkers, because they think that because they drink underage, it's okay for them to do it. That if they can teach them to drink at home responsibly, then they'll drink, you know, responsibly throughout their whole life. And that's been proven that that does not work. And then if you take the keys away from them, they're not going to drive. So what's the point of them not having a few beers at home? You know, they're not going anywhere. And again, they always think it's just harmless fun. There's the percentage of addiction from the time, if you start drinking when you're like the age of 13, 12 or 13, your chances of becoming addicted are 4 times fold than those who wait until they're 21 or older. And so this is the reality with the life imitates art type thing. You know, when teens feel that they have their parents' approval to drink, that they're going to end up doing it more often when the parents are not around. So this comes into play with, you know, the whole community aspect, that you want to be able to have open conversations with many adults in your family about all these topics. So teens and youth who drink will have experience with the following. They'll have school problems, you know, they'll miss school more often, failing grades, social problems. There's a lot of kids that will turn into fighting, or, you know, lying, stealing, all of those things. Legal problems. These are the serious issues, you know, for either drunk driving, of course, or physically hurting someone else when they're under the influence. And then you also have your physical problems, hangovers or illness. You start drinking at a young age, your body can't fight that. And it's going to mess with all your other I lost the word I was going for on that one, but it'll actually increase your chances of becoming sick or ill because your body's not going to be able to fight it off as well. And then, of course, you know, your unwanted, unplanned, or unprotected sexual activity. There are a lot of sexual assaults that happen with teens that are underage. The disruption to normal growth and sexual development. And we discussed the physical and sexual assaults. There is a higher risk for suicide and homicide amongst youth that are drinking underage. Because alcohol is a depressant, it may make you feel like you're happier, you know, at the beginning, but the more and more that you drink, or the more often that you drink, you're going to notice that it's a downer. It's a drug, and it's going to make you more upset and sad. Alcohol-related crashes and other intentional injuries such as burns, falls, and drowning. Memory issues. The average human brain does not stop developing until the age of 25, or around there, mid-20s. So if you introduce any type of drug or alcohol into your system, it's going to affect your brain. And so this is where the memory problems will come into play, and the misuse of other drugs. And I'm sure that Sergeant Lynn can attest to this, that it's usually not just alcohol that people are using, that there's always a mix of other drugs that are involved, whether they're prescription medication or non-prescription medication. So alcohol will help kickstart that addiction process in someone's life. And then, like I mentioned before, the changes in the brain development, these are lifelong effects. These are not something, your brain cannot just regenerate stuff. So it's really difficult to try and say, okay, well, I'm going to drink for 3 or 4 years and then stop, and then hope when you're 19 that everything will be better. It doesn't work that way. And then, of course, death from alcohol poisoning. So this is just a pie graph about what we had just discussed. And as you see, about a third of all underage drinking related deaths are alcohol related, but that's the third. So you have the other 66% that include the homicides, suicides, other poisonings, alcohol poisoning, drowning, fires, and so on and so forth. So just because you're taking the keys away from someone who has been drinking, you have other things that you have to worry about as well. So now we'll get into a little bit with the college numbers. So the majority of college age people, 18 to 25, don't actually binge drink as much as what a lot of people thought. About 50% of all adults abstain from alcohol use altogether, and those who avoid binge drinking will outperform those that are drinkers. But you still have the bad in this as well. So about 696,000 students were assaulted by another drinking student, and this was across the nation. And I know some of these you've probably seen in the news, but the majority of these you'll probably never hear about, but alcohol has been involved. 1 in 4 students report academic consequences from drinking, whether being, behind in class because they don't go, their grades start going down, they start missing papers. And then, of course, the ugly, 1,825 college students between 18 and 24 have died from alcohol-related causes. Again, I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of this in the news, especially like with sororities or fraternities or other groups trying to force alcohol on people. But a lot of times college students, is the first time they've ever been around alcohol ever. So they don't understand, what it can do to somebody. So you have to be very, very careful until, you're of age and you understand the full consequences before you start drinking. So Matt is a very, very big advocate for finding other ways to get home if you drink. So if you are over the age of 21, those that are in the college group age, find someone who doesn't drink and let them be the designated driver. I know I've done it many times, and to me, it's a lot more fun to videotape my friends being completely silly and putting them on YouTube the next day and saying, hey, look what you did last night. Nope, that was really you. So that's just me. But having a designated driver is always a really good option. And this designated driver will have no alcohol at all throughout that evening. And you want to make a plan before you go. So have something in mind of how you're going to get home, who you might call, an app you might use. Don't wait until you're halfway through the evening and, all of you are completely, intoxicated, or something had happened where everybody ended up drinking, and then try to figure out how you're going to get home, because it's kind of hard to make a good cognitive decision if you're under the influence. And then always look at alternate transportation. Me personally, I'm in Savannah, so we have a lot of different things that we can use. Uber, Lyft, taxis. We have bus travel, and we also got these cool little horse-drawn buggies that you can always take too. But as always, we want you guys to use one of these. Use an app or have a designated driver, or have something in place before you go out. Because we'd rather you use those than to end up seeing a police officer or ending up in the back of an ambulance because something went completely wrong. I like using this slide during our presentations because we also understand that youth will make mistakes, and we do know that youth do drink. We know college kids drink, but we want to make sure that they understand the alcohol poisoning signs. So we have the main ones listed here. So if someone's getting sick, shortness of breath, their skin is really pale, cold, and clammy, or they've passed out, don't just automatically jump to the conclusion that they're going to be perfectly fine if we just let them sleep it off. Or if they, get sick, okay, they got all the alcohol out of the system, they're fine. These are all telltale signs of alcohol poisoning. So you want to make sure that you call 911. And listen to the person on the phone to tell you what needs to be done. That's number one. If you can't get to 911 right away, or you're not quite sure, if you want to call a parent or whatever, there's different recovery positions that you want to make sure that person's in so they don't harm themselves. But I also want to make sure to let you guys know that there's actually a law on the books that if you, in good faith, even if you're underage, call 911 because somebody you think is having alcohol poisoning or reaction to some illegal substance, that you will not be arrested for having possession of alcohol or, being at that underage party. The police officers and, EMTs would much rather you guys call for help than not call for help and the worst case scenario happens. So there's, like I said, there's actually a Georgia code on the books. There's a law there for it. So, please make sure that you call for help. That's something that everybody wants to make sure that you guys do. And then what if you know that you're not the problem? Like you don't drink, you've never taken drugs before, but you do have a friend or even a family member that you think may have an issue. You can always talk to them about how you feel or bring it up to another adult that you know that may be able to have that conversation better than you can. But you always want to let them know that you're worried about them, you care about them, and you want to make sure that they're going to be able to fulfill their goals in life. Look for some resources that are within your community. Again, like I said, I live in a bigger area, so I have a little bit more resources. Some of the smaller towns may not, but you can always talk with counselors, local police officers. There's other victim advocates that are within the courts that would be more than happy to give you information. But there's a national hotline here that I have listed, or you can text, and they will give you local resources that are close to you in your area. But, and then always try to get them to be involved with things that you're doing that don't include drugs and alcohol. So, if you like to go to the movies or, just go play basketball or something, always invite them to come along so they feel like they're part of the crowd. And then I'm going to show you guys a short story here about Philip.
America, meet Philip, a happy-go-lucky prankster, incredibly talented athlete, and lovable son and brother whose life was changed forever. This is his drunk driving story. 28.7 million people admit to driving drunk every year. 28.7 million means that on any given day, there are roughly 300,000 drunk drivers on the road. Thankfully, 1.1 million are caught and arrested, roughly 3,200 a day. But even with those arrests, there are still 296,800 drunk drivers on the road each day. Keep in mind, this statistic strictly focuses on the people who admit to driving drunk. Philip lived in a highly populated area, so it only took him 26 years to encounter one of these drunk drivers. But Philip survived the crash. He was only injured, just injured. But those injuries were so severe that he was left with permanent brain damage and the inability to care for himself. After the crash, the medical bills began piling up, far surpassing $250,000 in the first 6 months alone. So Philip's family attempted to sue the drunk driver, but on top of his legal fees, he could only pay them $10,000. Then they attempted to sue the bar that overserved the driver, but the bar's insurance policy ran out, leaving Philip's family at a financial dead end. Speaking of the driver that hit Philip, the average drunk driver will make it home 80 times before being arrested. And this driver already had 6 prior drunk driving offenses, but still took to the road, drinking and driving. The kicker in all of this? Although Philip was left with permanent brain damage, the driver didn't kill him. And since he didn't, the maximum sentence in his case was just 10 years. The driver got 10 years. Philip got life. That's 10 years for ruining one man's future, leaving one family in pain, and creating one story to share. The drunk driving epidemic is hard to dispute when you stick to the stats. Over 1.1 million drunk drivers are arrested every year, and drunk driving injures 290,000 people a year, from minor to debilitating injuries, just like Philip's. In fact, in the 2 minutes you've spent watching this video, another innocent person has been injured by a drunk driver. With numbers this high, we're all involved. If you or someone you know has been impacted by drunk driving, please share your story on social media using hashtag #MyDrunkDrivingStory.
I like to play that video because it kind of puts into perspective that it's not always the drunk driver that is going to injure themselves, but what they can do to other people. So you need to do what you can to try and make sure that your friends or your family are not the ones that are out there driving. And now I'm going to leave this open to Sergeant Lynn. So if he has anything that he wants to add, I know he's probably watched this slideshow a couple times between me and him. So I'll open the floor up to you there, Sergeant.
Thank you. I wanted to comment on and revisit was the designated drivers. And, smaller areas like where I work, you may have somebody that's working the Uber, but not very often locally. And the cabs usually don't run after 1, 2 o'clock. So they've got certain groups or there's certain people that will offer to give rides from the bars and, so not risking a DUI or what have you. But I wanted to, ask folks to be mindful of who you're allowing you to drive, and that where you said pre-plan and have it set before you go is the best idea I've heard all day, because you don't know who you get in the car with some of these folks. And the Savannahs, I remember going out to Savannahs for wedding get-togethers, and I remember walking back to the hotel we were staying at after a night out, and for whatever reason I saw folks that were in really bad shape walking those same streets that probably wouldn't remember the night after they got home or where they were going. But I think it would target you to become a victim of a further crime, whether you're walking. So the younger folks, this binge drinking stuff is where I was going with it. If you get to where you're drinking and to a point where you're not going to remember, you can't control your actions, you're opening yourself up for the sexual assaults, the robberies, the beating. There's some evil people out there, and they will take advantage of it while you're vulnerable. And I wanted to touch on the numbers that we had, and I want to say this: the numbers are only what we can prove. I probably say a mass that we haven't even accounted for that were somebody didn't do their job, or I remember years ago I was in the house building business, and some of those folks were, they'd get smashed at lunchtime and work on the roof of the house, and they're falling off left and right. And those numbers probably never reported as far as serious injuries involving alcohol, because, it's a roof that fell off a roof, and, so that's how it's reported. So, be mindful of those numbers. I've always been a strong believer that these numbers are higher than what we actually see on paper. The alcohol related deaths and injuries can happen to anybody. It don't pick a certain race, don't pick a certain ethnic group, don't pick a certain financial status. It'll attack and affect anybody on any given day. Back when my partner Bobby was killed in 2012, the girl that killed him was, for all intents and purposes, a sweethearted college grad, and she wasn't a lifelong criminal, and she came from a really good family. And after she had killed him on I-95, besides it affecting his family, it affected her family. And but I want the kids to be mindful that it don't pick and choose who it's going to affect. It'll attack anybody.
Those are very good points. Your partner's case was the first case I worked when I moved to Savannah, so I remember that one very well. But yeah, just like Sergeant Lynn said, it doesn't, drunk driving doesn't really care who it affects. I mean, I've met, I always say that I've met these amazing people for the wrong circumstances doing this job. And they are the most eclectic group of people I've ever met. I mean, each one of them has their different stories, their different backgrounds. And it was all because someone chose to drink and drive. In the case that we saw here with Philip, I mean, that person had done it 6 times before, and they continued to drive. And there's a lot of problems with that. And then the statistic with, 80 people being on the roadway at any given, or driving 80 times before you get caught. So when you're out driving and those 300,000 people are out there driving that are under the influence, which one of those times is that person's 81st time? I mean, it kind of puts things into perspective. So to make sure that you're safe, we try to give you guys avenues and, topics and ways to make sure that you get home safe, and that where you're going at night, people know where you are and what time you're supposed to be back. And I know that it gets annoying when you hear those questions from your parents, but there's reasons for it. I mean, we want you guys to be safe. And then if anybody else has any questions on the panel at all, I know Matt is very, very intelligent. He knows lots of stuff. I've worked with him. I got the pleasure of doing a ride along with him once, and just seeing him work in the community was just, it was really refreshing, because everybody in his community knew who he was, and it didn't matter what side of town we were on. It didn't matter what store we went into. I mean, everybody knew who he was. So anybody have any questions at all? Now would be the time to ask. Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys very much for being part of this today. We will have this posted up on our YouTube page, so you can watch it anytime. And again, if you have any questions, you can always contact our state office. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have, or you can contact Sergeant Lynn at the Lyons Police Department, and they'll help you guys out as well.